Once upon a time, in a world filled with gods, mortals, and creatures beyond imagination, there was a woman whose beauty transcended all boundaries. Her name was Medusa. Her hair flowed like the darkest, richest silk. Her skin shimmered with an ethereal glow, and her eyes were the kind that could captivate the hardest of hearts. You've probably heard of her, the one with snakes for hair. The infamous Gorgon who could turn people to stone with just a glance. But before that, before the curse, there was a beauty that even the gods couldn't resist. You feel that sensation, don't you? That kind of beauty that makes your breath catch in your throat. Now imagine Medusa, standing in a temple to Athena, her grace drawing eyes from every corner. She was, quite literally, the most beautiful mortal to ever exist. It wasn't just the mortals who took notice, though. The gods did too, and they weren't shy about it. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, craft, and war, was not just any deity. She was the protector of cities, a symbol of strength, and a beacon of intellect. But there was a vulnerability lurking behind her statuesque demeanor. You see, despite all of her power, Athena wasn't immune to one thing: envy. And here, in the heart of the temple, Athena found herself envying Medusa's beauty. Not in the way a mortal might envy another's looks. No, it was more than that. It was the kind of envy that could transform admiration into something darker. Medusa's beauty wasn't simply admired, it was worshipped. Athena's temple, her sacred space, the very epitome of divine wisdom and power, was supposed to be untouched, sacred, untainted by vanity. But Medusa had unwittingly crossed a line. In a way, she had outshone the goddess who ruled the very temple she stood in. Athena could feel the jealousy festering within her, sharp, pointed, and relentless. But here's the twist. She wasn't the only one who had taken notice. The mighty Poseidon, god of the sea, had also found Medusa irresistible. Historians still argue whether Poseidon's attraction to Medusa was a divine pursuit or mere lust, but it's certain that his desire would set the course for Medusa's tragic fall. Athena could not bear the thought of this mortal being desired by a god, her temple desecrated by the very act of admiration. So, this envy began to evolve, transforming into something more malicious. Athena was no longer just upset. She was hurt, deeply so. The spark of a goddess's rage began to kindle inside her. And soon, Medusa would feel the full force of Athena's wrath. As you imagine it, you might wonder, was Athena justified in her feelings? Was it wrong for Medusa to be so beautiful? Could Athena have handled it differently? It's hard to say, but one thing is certain. This moment marked the beginning of a cruel turn in Medusa's fate, and as much as Athena might have resented it, there was a part of her that knew deep down that the beauty she envied was no longer something to be cherished. It was something that had to be destroyed. The temple is still. The cool breeze brushes past the marble, making the torches flicker and cast dancing shadows on the walls. As you move through the shadows, your eyes return to Medusa, standing in the center of your sacred space. But it's not just her beauty that occupies your mind now. The winds have shifted, bringing with them a new presence, one that stirs your unease even further. The air, charged with divine energy, heralds Poseidon. Poseidon, the sea god, mighty and unyielding, with eyes that could make the ocean itself tremble. You've heard of his many conquests, and though you have always held a cool distance from the temptations of love and desire, you cannot ignore the pull that Medusa has on him. Now, the god's gaze locks onto Medusa with a hunger that you recognize all too well. A desire so consuming it can scarcely be contained. You feel it in the air. The tension building as Poseidon strides across the floor, the sound of his sandals reverberating through the hollow temple. Medusa stands frozen, blissfully unaware of the storm about to sweep over her life. His eyes piercing, hungry scan her every feature, and you know the moment he sees her, there is no turning back. His presence is not just one of admiration, it is one of power. And that power, once it grips him, will be impossible to release. Historians still argue whether Poseidon's pursuit of Medusa was one of divine lust or simple attraction. Some say it was a calculated move, a strategy to assert dominance, while others believe it was a pure act of passion. But regardless of the reasoning, the result is the same. Medusa, innocent in her beauty, is caught in the tempest of Poseidon's desire. The god of the sea, unable to resist, approaches her, his intentions clear. You, Athena, can feel your heart pounding with a mix of dread and rage. You see Poseidon's interest in Medusa as an act of desecration. a violation of what should be your temple, your sacred space. Medusa is not just a mortal, she is now, in your eyes, a symbol of something you cannot control. A woman who has drawn the eye of Poseidon, and now becomes a trophy to be taken. Poseidon's powerful hand gently grasps Medusa's shoulders, and she looks up at him in confusion. What could she possibly understand of the god's whims? But you know what happens next, don't you? In an instant, everything changes for Medusa. Poseidon's actions, his overpowering presence, are the catalyst that sets in motion a tragedy no one could have predicted. The gods do not care for the consequences of their desires. Poseidon does not think, only acts, fulfilling his urges without foresight. And you, Athena, stand at the precipice of a decision that is no longer about Medusa's beauty or Poseidon's desires. It is now about power, your power. You've been watching, waiting for something to happen. You could stop it. You could intervene. But that would require more than divine will. It would require you to confront your own envy, your own jealousy. But as you stand there, and not tightening in your chest, you realize that you cannot, will not, allow this affront to continue. Medusa has already transgressed in your eyes. Now, it's time for you to act. And so, the act occurs within your temple, as Medusa's innocence is forever lost. The god's desires are fulfilled, and you, Athena, are left with the consequences of your own actions. This moment, this encounter, is the turning point. Medusa will never be the same again. Historians still wonder whether Athena's wrath was justified, or if, in her jealousy, she had created a monster where none had existed. Could Medusa have been saved from Poseidon's advances, or was she always meant to become something else in the eyes of the gods? You cannot help but wonder, even as you stand there, observing the consequences of your own deep-seated emotions. The air in the temple grows heavier with each passing moment. You stand in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on you. Medusa, once so full of life and beauty, is now a symbol of something you can never fully take back. You watch Poseidon depart, his victory complete, and the sound of his footsteps echo in your mind like a drumbeat. The temple, your sacred space, has been defiled. Your sanctuary, where only the gods were meant to tread, has been violated by the one thing you could not foresee: desire. Your mind churns with confusion and anger. How dare Poseidon, how dare he do this to Medusa, in your very domain? But as much as you feel betrayed by his actions, your feelings for Medusa are far more complicated. She is no longer just the mortal who walked in your temple. She is now marked by Poseidon's desire, tainted by the gods. And your jealousy, your sense of ownership over what is beautiful, begins to twist inside you. Historians still argue whether Athena's curse was born out of justice or pure rage. Was it a necessary punishment, or was it a reaction to the violation of her own sanctuary? Was it about Medusa's transgression, or was it about Athena's need to reassert control over her realm? The answer remains unclear, but the truth lies in your heart, Athena. This is no longer about Medusa alone. This is about you. This is about your power, your pride, your very identity as a goddess of wisdom. The decision weighs on you, a heavy burden. You know what must be done. You cannot allow this mortal, this Medusa, to remain a reminder of your failure. She has been marked both by Poseidon's actions and by the weakness you allow to bloom in your heart. Medusa's beauty was never meant to belong to another god, let alone Poseidon. Her innocence was shattered the moment she entered this temple, the very place you swore to protect from defilement. The choice is clear, and you, Athena, make it, but there's no joy in it. The curse you are about to lay upon her is not born of triumph, but of sorrow. As much as you tell yourself that this is the only way, you cannot escape the truth that a part of you grieves for what Medusa has lost. You, who wield wisdom like a sword, find yourself wrapped in the same rage that drives mortals to do the unthinkable. You want to preserve what is yours, to maintain control over the sacredness of your temple. But in doing so, you destroy a life. You step forward, your hand raised, calling upon the magic that only a goddess of your power can wield. A flash of light, blinding and cruel, surrounds Medusa. Her beauty, her defining characteristic, is ripped away, replaced by something else, something monstrous. Her hair, once golden and flowing, turns to snakes, each one hissing in unison, each one alive with venom. Her skin hardens, becoming an unearthly shade of green. Her once beautiful face now distorted in terror. The curse is complete. Medusa's eyes, which once held the power to draw admiration, are now deadly. One glance from her, and those who meet her gaze are frozen in stone, as if captured by the very force of her despair. And as you look at her, standing in the temple that should have been a place of safety, you know that this is the price she pays for her beauty, her allure. This is the price of divine jealousy. A wave of regret sweeps over you, Athena. What have you done? The girl who once walked through your temple, full of grace and innocence, is now a monster. Her humanity has been stripped away, and in its place, she is now a living weapon, one that will be feared by all, one that will live in isolation for the rest of her days. But you cannot undo it. This was the only path left to you. Historians still wonder whether Athena's regret was genuine, or if it was merely a reflection of her own arrogance and pride. Was the curse a necessary evil, or was it Athena's own way of dealing with feelings she couldn't control? Was Medusa truly to blame for her beauty, or was she simply a pawn in a game of divine egos? For you, Athena, the regret is real, but the curse is final. Medusa, once a beautiful mortal, is now a creature of stone, a figure in the shadows that no one will ever dare to love again. The transformation and Medusa's suffering, the curse has taken hold. Medusa's transformation is complete. You watch her from your place high above as she stumbles, unsteady on her feet. Her hair, once a golden river, now rides with venomous snakes, each one alive and eager, as though mocking her very existence. The beauty that had once made her the object of divine admiration is gone, stripped away by your hand. What remains is a creature, a monster feared by all, loved by none. Her face, distorted and horrified, reflects the horror that lives inside her heart. You, Athena, could feel a cold weight settle in your chest as you look down at Medusa, now a shell of who she once was. The curse is not just a physical one. It goes deeper into her very soul. She is no longer the mortal you had once envied. She is now something to be avoided, something to be terrified of. Her gaze alone can turn a living being into stone, locking them forever in an unfeeling, unblinking stupor. The very thing that once made her the epitome of mortal beauty has now become her greatest curse, a power she cannot control, a power that will condemn her to isolation. But for Medusa, the pain of her transformation is not just physical. As the curse consumes her, she feels the weight of the loss of her humanity, the loss of her connection to the world she once knew. The friends, the family, the lovers, all of them are now distant memories, unreachable because of the curse you have placed upon her. She can no longer interact with others, no longer experience the simple joy of touch, of human connection. What was once a life full of promise and potential has now become an endless nightmare, a solitary existence where no one dares to look her in the eye. You have done this, Athena. And while you may tell yourself it was for the greater good, to preserve the sanctity of your temple, you cannot escape the truth that you have destroyed a life in the process. Medusa did not ask for this. She was not the one who sought Poseidon's attention, and yet she has paid the price for his actions. Was the punishment truly just, or was it born from your jealousy and your inability to forgive what could not be undone? Medusa, standing in the shadows, has been abandoned by all. Her once gorgeous appearance now turns her into a pariah, a myth, a legend, a figure of fear that people tell stories about but never approach. And the suffering doesn't stop there. No longer able to walk freely, Medusa is now confined to caves and desolate corners of the earth, where she can hurt no one, where no one can hurt her. The only company she has is the whispering hiss of the snakes in her hair and the cold, unfeeling stone that marks her every victim. Each glance, a tragedy. Each glance, another life turned to stone. Historians still debate whether the curse Athena placed on Medusa was a just punishment for Poseidon's transgression, or whether it was an expression of Athena's deeper need to control the narrative, of beauty, of power. Did Medusa deserve this fate, or was it simply an expression of divine will run amok? Regardless of the reason, the reality of it is clear. Medusa's life, as it was, has ended. The woman she once was is gone, replaced by a creature of rage and sorrow. You, Athena, cannot ignore the hollow feeling in your chest as you watch Medusa from afar. Is this what you wanted? The answer is unclear, but the weight of your actions is undeniable. Medusa will live this way alone, in pain, a living monument to divine wrath. But deep inside, you feel the stirrings of something more complicated. Regret. Medusa, in her cursed form, is now a prisoner of both her own power and the divine forces that have shaped her. She is the victim of not only Poseidon's lust, but of your decision, Athena. You, who once held the power to create, have now shaped a fate that will follow her for eternity, and yet, as you look down on her, you can't shake the thought that Medusa, despite all she's lost, has something you've never had, something you, Athena, can never reclaim, a human connection. Medusa may be a monster, but she remains, in some way, still human. And it is that humanity that will haunt you for all eternity. The world changes, but Medusa remains the same. In the depths of caves, hidden away from the eyes of the world, she suffers in silence, the weight of her new existence pressing heavily on her every waking moment. Her beauty is no more, her innocence lost. She is not a woman any longer, but a creature of wrath, a gorgon, feared by all. Her life is now nothing but an endless cycle of solitude and isolation. She is the very embodiment of the curse you placed upon her, Athena, and each day she must live with the consequences of your decision. You, Athena, watch from afar, unable to help her. You tell yourself that it was the only way, that Medusa's transformation was inevitable, that Poseidon's actions demanded justice. But deep inside, you know the truth that burns in the pit of your stomach, the truth that, despite your power, despite your wisdom, despite your divine status, you made a decision out of jealousy. You made a decision to strip a woman of her humanity because her beauty overshadowed your own. You made a decision that condemned her to a life of endless suffering. Historians still argue whether Athena's decision was driven by justice or by her own personal envy. Some believe it was a necessary punishment for Medusa's transgression. Others argue that Athena's actions were too extreme, too cruel, especially considering Medusa's innocence in the matter. But no one can deny the impact of your choice. Athena, the regret that follows you, lingering in your heart, is not just the regret of a god for what has been done. It is the regret of a woman who made a mistake that cost someone else their life. You feel the weight of this every time you close your eyes, every time you remember Medusa's beauty, her innocence, her humanity. You remember the look in her eyes, that fleeting moment when she stood before you in your temple, unaware of the storm that was about to consume her. That moment is forever etched in your memory, and you cannot escape it. It haunts you, even as you stand among the gods, pretending that all is well. But Medusa, in her isolation, has begun to change. She has accepted what she is now, what you have made her. She has become something new, something different from the woman she was before. Her identity, once defined by beauty, has now been defined by power, the power to turn others to stone with a single glance, the power to destroy everything she once cherished. But it is also a power that forces her to live apart from the world, locked in eternal solitude. In the stillness of her cave, Medusa begins to look at herself differently. She is no longer just the object of divine jealousy, the woman whose beauty was too great for the gods to ignore. She is something more now. She is a survivor. Her transformation has forced her to adapt, to evolve in ways no one could have anticipated. Where once she had been beautiful and vulnerable, she is now powerful and invincible, yet still lonely. Still a prisoner of the curse you laid upon her. You cannot help but wonder, Athena, if Medusa ever forgives you, if she ever looks upon you and feels anything but hatred. You cannot undo what has been done. No amount of wisdom, no amount of power, can take away the curse you've placed upon her. But in the quiet corners of your mind, you begin to wonder if Medusa, in her newfound strength, has somehow found a way to reclaim herself, despite everything you have done. Maybe, just maybe, she has found a kind of freedom in the only way she can. As for you, Athena, the guilt lingers. You may continue to rule over your temple, to stand among the gods as a figure of wisdom and strength, but inside, you carry the weight of Medusa's curse with you always. Her tragedy is now intertwined with your own, and no amount of divine power can ever erase the stain of that decision. You cannot escape the truth that you were the one who condemned her to this fate, and yet, despite all of this, Medusa remains. She remains in the shadows, a symbol of beauty destroyed, a woman turned monster, a victim of gods and their whims. But she is more than just a tragedy. She is a reminder of the cost of pride, of jealousy, and of power that goes unchecked. And in that, Medusa holds a lesson for all who dare to look. The gods may have power, Athena, but they too are bound by the choices they make. And sometimes, Those choices echo through eternity. As you let the weight of Medusa's story settle, there's a quiet realization that comes with it. The gods, in all their majesty and power, are not above the consequences of their actions. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, made a decision that would haunt her for eternity. Medusa, the woman whose beauty was too great to be allowed, was transformed into a monster, a creature of stone, left to live alone in the shadows. But in this tragedy, there's a reflection of something universal: the mistakes we make, the regrets we carry, and the ways we must learn to live with them. Medusa's story doesn't end in vengeance, it ends in survival. A monster, yes, but one who lives, who exists in the face of everything that tried to destroy her. And Athena, the wise goddess, is left to grapple with the consequences of her own jealousy and pride. But in this quiet conclusion, there's also a lesson about the power of beauty, of jealousy, and of forgiveness, both given and received. Medusa, in her curse, becomes something more than just a victim of gods. She becomes a figure of strength in her own right, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even when trapped in the most monstrous of forms. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You've stayed with me through this entire journey, and I hope it's given you something to think about, something to reflect on, as you walk through the world and see it with new eyes.